Julia Sterling had everything: wealth, power, a dynasty at her fingertips, until the night she overheard the two men she trusted most plotting to cage her like a beautiful bird. In a single moment of fury and desperation, the heiress vanished into the fog, trading her red gala gown for a stranger's coat and her identity for a lie that would shatter two hearts. On a rain-soaked dock, a proud fisherman named Marcus would offer his hand to a woman he believed had nothing, never knowing she was the very enemy trying to destroy his world. What started as an escape became a love so real it burned away every lie. But when her father's black SUV rolled onto that pier, the truth would explode like a storm at sea. This is the story of a woman who had to lose everything to find herself, and a man who had to forgive the unforgivable to keep the love of his life. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this journey from betrayal to redemption will leave you breathless. The ballroom glittered like something from a movie. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, throwing pieces of light across the marble floors. Women in designer gowns laughed too loud, and men in tuxedos shook hands with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Julia Sterling stood near the champagne tower, wearing a red dress that cost more than most people made in 6 months, and she felt like she was suffocating. "There's the bride-to-be!" A woman with too much perfume grabbed Julia's arm. "You must be so excited." Julia forced a smile, the kind she'd practiced in mirrors since she was 12. "Thank you. Grant is such a catch, and your father must be thrilled about the the marriage." The woman winked and floated away into the crowd. The merger! That's what everyone called it when they thought Julia wasn't listening. Her engagement to Grant Whitmore wasn't about love. It was about combining two powerful families, about controlling her trust fund, about keeping her father's empire growing. She was 29 years old and felt like a chess piece being moved around someone else's board. Grant appeared beside her, his hand settling on her lower back. She fought the urge to step away. "Smile, darling," he whispered. "Your father's watching." She looked across the room. Walter Sterling stood surrounded by board members, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression calculating as always. He caught her eye and nodded once, a command, not a greeting. "I need air," Julia said. "The speeches start in 10 minutes, Grant said, not looking at her. He was scanning the room, probably counting important people. "Then I have 10 minutes. She pulled away from his touch and walked toward the balcony doors, her heels clicking against the marble. The night air hit her face, cool and damp. It had been raining earlier, and the city looked blurry through the mist. She gripped the stone railing and tried to breathe. Beyond the hotel, the city stretched out in layers, office buildings giving way to apartments, then warehouses, then somewhere far away, the docks where normal people lived normal lives. The balcony door opened behind her, but she didn't turn around. "Julia's playing the reluctant bride again?" Her father's voice. "It's getting old, Grant." Julia froze. "Give her time," Grant said. "Once the trust fund vests after the wedding, she'll settle down. Besides, she won't have much choice once we restructure the board." "You're sure about the votes?" "Absolutely. 6 weeks after the wedding, we present the motion. She gets a nice office with a view and no real power. Problem solved." Walter Sterling laughed. It was a cold sound. "My daughter's brilliant, I'll give her that. But she's too soft for real business, too emotional. This is better for everyone." Julia's hands tightened on the railing. Her fingernails dug into the stone. "To the future, Mrs. Whitmore," Grant said. She heard the clink of glasses. "To control," her father replied. Something broke inside Julia's chest. Not loudly, more like a crack in ice, silent but complete. She turned slowly and watched through the glass doors as the two men she was supposed to trust walked back into the ballroom, laughing together. The world tilted. She'd known, somewhere deep down, known that her father saw her as an asset, not a daughter. Known that Grant never looked at her the way a man should look at the woman he claimed to love. But hearing them plan to cage her while pretending it was for her own good, that was different. Her chest felt tight. Too tight. She couldn't get enough air. Julia stumbled back into the ballroom, but not toward the party. She moved along the wall, behind pillars, staying in the shadows. Her vision tunneled. Everything looked too bright and too far away at the same time. Near the service entrance, she saw a coat rack. Black jackets hung there, the kind the catering staff wore. Without thinking, she grabbed a large, tan trench coat. It was too big, stained, probably belonged to one of the waiters, and pulled it on over her red dress. "Miss Sterling?" A waiter looked at her, confused. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. She kicked off her heels, leaving them on the floor, and pushed through the service door into a concrete stairwell. Her bare feet slapped against the cold steps as she ran down, down, away from the lights and the lies and the life that was squeezing her to death. The exit led to an alley. Rain misted down, turning the pavement slick and black. Julia ran. She didn't have a plan, didn't have her phone. It was in her purse back at the party. Didn't have money, didn't have anything except a stolen coat and a red dress and feet that were already getting cut on the rough sidewalk. She just ran. The city changed around her. The clean streets near the hotel gave way to older neighborhoods. Streetlights flickered, the sidewalks cracked and buckled. She kept walking, her breath coming in gasps, until the buildings thinned out and the smell of salt water filled the air. The docks. She'd never been to this part of the city. Her father owned property here, or wanted to. She remembered board meetings where men pointed at maps and talked about development opportunities and clearing out the old guard. But she'd never seen it herself. Fog rolled in from the water, thick and gray. Fishing boats creaked against their moorings. Somewhere, a bell clanged. The sound was lonely and strange. Julia's legs shook. Her feet throbbed. She couldn't run anymore. She walked onto a wooden pier, her steps unsteady. The coat hung heavy on her shoulders, soaked through with rain and mist. She must have looked insane, a woman in an oversized coat, barefoot, makeup running down her face. She didn't care. Her foot caught on a broken board. She fell hard, her ankle twisting beneath her. Pain shot up her leg, sharp and hot. She cried out and grabbed at her ankle, rocking back and forth on the wet wood. "Hey!" A man's voice, rough and cautious. "You all right?" Footsteps approached, heavy boots on wood. Julia looked up through her tangled hair. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark skin that gleamed in the dim light from a nearby boat. He wore work clothes, canvas pants, a heavy flannel shirt, boots caked with salt and grime. His face was guarded, his eyes sharp as he took in her appearance. "I'm fine," Julia said automatically. Her voice cracked. "You're bleeding." He nodded toward her feet. "And you're not fine." She looked down. Blood mixed with rainwater on the pier. The man crouched down, keeping his distance. "You running from someone? You in trouble?" Julia's mind raced. This man didn't recognize her. He saw the dirty coat, the bare feet, the desperate way she'd fallen. He didn't see Julia Sterling, heiress and CEO in training. He saw someone in trouble, someone who needed help. For the first time in her life, she could be anyone. She started, then stopped. "I'm okay. I just need a minute." "Can't stay out here." His voice was firm but not unkind. Fog's coming in heavy. You'll freeze. I don't have anywhere to go. The words came out small and true. She really didn't. She couldn't go back to the hotel. Couldn't go back to her father's penthouse. Couldn't face any of it. The man studied her for a long moment. His jaw worked like he was making a decision. Finally, he stood and held out his hand. Come on, let's get some ice on that ankle. Julia took his hand. It was rough, calloused, warm. He pulled her up gently, careful of her injury. She limped beside him toward a fishing boat named the Iron Lady. The letters were faded, but proud. He helped her onto the deck and guided her to a plastic crate turned upside down. Sit. She sat. He disappeared into the boat's cabin and came back with a first aid kit and a thermos. He wrapped ice in a towel and placed it against her ankle with surprising gentleness for such big hands. You hurt anywhere else? No. He poured something hot into the thermos cap and handed it to her. Coffee. It was bitter and perfect. Thank you, she whispered. You got a name? Julia hesitated. Jules. It was close enough to the truth. Her mother used to call her that before she died. Marcus. He sat down on another crate, watching her. You in trouble with the law, Jules? She shook her head quickly. No, nothing like that. Someone hurt you? Not the way you mean. Marcus nodded slowly, like he understood there were different kinds of hurt. You got people you can call? No. You homeless? She looked down at the coat, at her muddy feet, at the way she must look. I guess I am right now. That seemed to satisfy him. He leaned back, crossing his arms. Can't stay on the boat, but the truck's unlocked. You can sleep in the cab tonight if you need to. Locks from the inside. Julia's throat tightened. This stranger was offering her safety without asking for anything in return. When was the last time anyone had done that? Why are you helping me? She asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking out at the foggy water. My mama used to say everybody deserves a hand when they're down. Long as you're not causing trouble, you can have a hand. I won't cause trouble. Good. He stood up. I got work to finish. You rest. And Jules? Yeah? Whatever you're running from, you can't run forever. But you can rest for tonight. He walked back to the other end of the boat, picking up tools and getting back to whatever repair he'd been doing. Julia watched him work, his movements efficient and sure. He didn't look back at her, giving her privacy in her misery. She sipped the coffee and felt something shift inside her chest. Not the breaking feeling from earlier, something else. Something that felt almost like hope. The fog wrapped around the boat like a blanket. The city disappeared. For the first time in years, maybe her whole life, Julia Sterling was invisible, and it felt like freedom. Morning came slowly on the water. Julia woke up stiff and cold in the cab of Marcus's truck. Her neck ached from sleeping against the window. Her ankle throbbed. But she was alive, and she was away from that ballroom, and that was enough. Through the windshield, she watched the sun turn the fog pink and gold. The docks looked different in daylight, rough and honest, with none of the polish she was used to. Boats rocked gently. Seabirds called. Men moved along the piers, carrying equipment, shouting greetings to each other. A tap on the window made her jump. Marcus stood outside, holding a paper bag. He gestured for her to unlock the door. She did. Morning, he said, handing her the bag. Figured you'd be hungry. Inside was a breakfast sandwich wrapped in foil, still warm. Her stomach clenched with hunger. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Yesterday? The day before? Thank you, she said. She meant it more than he could know. Marcus leaned against the truck, drinking coffee from a travel mug. He looked tired, like he'd been up all night. You got a plan? Julia took a bite of the sandwich. Egg, cheese, sausage on a roll. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Not really. Can't stay in my truck forever. I know. He watched her eat, his expression thoughtful. You any good with your hands? What? Work. You know how to work? Julia thought about boardrooms and spreadsheets and negotiations. I can learn. I need help sanding the deck. He nodded toward the Iron Lady. Been putting it off for weeks. If you want to earn some cash, I'll pay you for the day. She stared at him. You'd hire me? You don't know anything about me. I know you're in a tight spot. I know you need money, and I need help. He shrugged. Seems simple enough. Nothing in Julia's life had ever been simple. But here was this man offering her work based on nothing but the fact that she showed up. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Fair warning, it's hard work. You'll get splinters. Julia looked down at her hands. Her manicure was already ruined. What was a few splinters compared to everything else? I can handle it. Marcus almost smiled. We'll see. She could not, in fact, handle it. The sandpaper felt wrong in her hands. She didn't know how hard to press or which direction to move. Her arms ached after 10 minutes. Splinters dug into her palms despite the work gloves Marcus had given her. The sun beat down on her back, and sweat dripped into her eyes. Marcus worked on the other side of the deck, moving with easy rhythm. He didn't talk much, just showed her what to do and let her figure it out. Julia wanted to quit, wanted to stand up and walk away and call Elise to bring a car. But something stubborn inside her refused. She kept sanding, even when her shoulders burned. Kept going, even when she felt like crying. Because this was real. This was the first thing she'd done in years that wasn't about her father's company or her family's image. This was just her, working with her hands, earning something herself. By noon, she'd finished one section of deck. It wasn't perfect. Marcus's side looked much smoother, but it was done. Marcus stood up and stretched, inspecting her work. He nodded. Not bad for a first-timer. Pride bloomed in Julia's chest. Stupid, maybe. It was just sanding wood, but she felt it anyway. Come on, Marcus said. Let's get some food. They sat on crates in the shade, eating sandwiches Marcus had brought in a cooler. Julia's hands shook as she unwrapped hers. Every muscle hurt. You okay? Marcus asked. Yeah, just sore. It gets easier. They ate in comfortable silence. Around them, the dock was busy with afternoon work. Boats coming in, catches being unloaded, engines being repaired. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. People called out to Marcus as they passed. He waved back, but didn't invite anyone over. How long you been doing this? Julia asked. Fishing? Since I was a kid? My dad's a fisherman. His dad was too. You like it? Marcus looked out at the water. Some days I love it. Some days it feels like the ocean's trying to kill me. But it's mine, you know? This boat, this work, nobody can take it from me. Julia understood that more than he knew. Must be nice, having something that's really yours. You don't? She shook her head, careful not to say too much. Everything I had came with strings attached. Well, Marcus crumpled up his sandwich wrapper. The $40 I'm paying you today, that's all yours, no strings. $40? She'd spent more than that on a single glass of wine at fundraisers. But right now, it felt like a fortune. Thank you, she said. For the work, for last night, for everything. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. really looked like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "You're running from something bad, aren't you?" Julia's throat tightened. "Yeah." "You safe here?" "Safer than I was." He nodded slowly. "All right then. You can come back tomorrow if you want. Always work to do around here." "Really?" "Long as you show up and work hard, you got a place here." He stood up and brushed off his hands. "Come on, Jules. Deck's not gonna sand itself." They worked until sunset. By the time Marcus handed her two $20 bills, Julia could barely lift her arms, but she'd done it. She'd worked a full day doing something real and hard and honest. As she walked away from the dock, she slipped her hand into the coat pocket and found something, a $50 bill, crumpled and forgotten. A tip someone had meant for the waiter who owned this coat. $90 total, her first earned money in years. Julia looked back at the Iron Lady, at Marcus securing the boat for the night. Then she looked at the bills in her hand. For the first time since she'd run away from that ballroom, Julia smiled. Maybe she could do this. Maybe, just for a little while, she could be Jules instead of Julia Sterling. Maybe she could be free. Julia never went back to the penthouse. Not really. Oh, she showed up at Sterling Enterprises every day. She wore her power suits and sat through board meetings and pretended everything was normal. Her father thought she'd gotten over her episode. Grant kept calling her cell, leaving messages about wedding plans that she deleted without listening to. But the second work ended, she changed clothes in her car, jeans and t-shirts bought from a thrift store with her dock money, and drove to the water, to Marcus, to the only place where she felt like herself. It had been 4 days since she'd run away. 4 days of living 2 lives. The Julia life felt like watching someone else through a window. Cold, distant, wrong. The Jules life felt real. She parked her car, a modest rental she'd gotten with cash, nothing that would draw attention, and walked down the pier. The evening sun turned everything golden. She could see Marcus on the Iron Lady, wrestling with something tangled on the deck. "Need help?" she called out. He looked up, and something in his face changed, softened. "Yeah, this net's fighting me." Julia climbed aboard, careful of her ankle. It still hurt sometimes, but it was healing. She looked at the tangled mass of netting and rope. It was a disaster, all twisted and knotted together. "How'd it get this bad?" she asked. "Snagged on something underwater yesterday. Took me an hour to cut it free." Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. "Been trying to untangle it all day. Might just have to cut it up and start over." "Wait." Julia knelt down, studying the mess. Her brain, the one that solved complex business problems and found patterns in chaos, kicked into gear. "Hand me that hook." She started at the edges, following individual strands, finding where they connected. Marcus watched her work, his arms crossed. "You're good at this," he said after a while. "It's like a puzzle." She pulled a section free. "You just have to see the pattern." "Where'd you learn to think like that?" Julia's hands stilled, careful. "I used to do puzzles with my mom, before she died." It was true. Her mother had loved jigsaw puzzles, huge ones, thousands of pieces. They'd spent weekends working on them together. It was one of the few real memories Julia had before her mother's death had turned her father cold and her childhood into a series of boarding schools. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly, "about your mom." It was a long time ago. They worked together in silence. Julia's fingers flew through the tangles while Marcus followed her lead, pulling sections free as she loosened them. Within an hour, they had the nets spread out properly, mostly intact. Marcus stood back, looking at their work. Then he looked at her. "You got a good head on you, Jules?" Real good. The compliment hit different than any praise she'd gotten in a boardroom. It felt earned. So? Marcus said, wiping his hands on his jeans. You coming back tomorrow? Julia's heart did something complicated. You want me to? Wouldn't ask if I didn't. She smiled. She couldn't help it. Then yeah, I'll be here. The rain came down hard that evening. Julia sat in Marcus's small house at the edge of the docks, dripping wet and grateful to be inside. The house was old, paint peeling, floors creaking, but it felt more like a home than her father's penthouse ever had. Stew's almost ready, Marcus called from the kitchen. Julia looked around the living room. Photos covered the walls. Marcus as a kid on a boat, an older couple she assumed were his parents, certificates for fishing competitions. Everything was worn but cared for, loved. You must be Jules. She turned. An elderly man sat in a wheelchair by the window, watching her with sharp, knowing eyes. He had Marcus's bone structure, but age had softened his face. White hair crowned his head. I'm sorry, Julia said, standing quickly. I didn't see you there. Most people don't. He rolled closer, studying her with an intensity that made her nervous. I'm Pop Thorne, Marcus's father. It's nice to meet you, sir. Sir. Pop chuckled. Been a while since anyone called me that. You got good manners. Where you from, Jules? Julia's stomach tightened. Around? Around is a big place. His eyes didn't leave her face. You talk like someone who went to fancy schools. Walk like you're used to wearing heels, even in those work boots. Pop. Marcus appeared with 3 bowls of stew. Leave her alone. Just making conversation. But Pop kept watching her as she sat down. The stew was simple. Beef, potatoes, carrots. But it warmed her from the inside out. They ate at a small table, rain drumming on the roof. Marcus tells me you're good with puzzles, Pop said. She untangled that net in an hour, Marcus added. The one I was about to give up on. Smart and hard-working. Pop nodded approvingly. Rare combination these days. Julia focused on her stew, uncomfortable with the attention. You hear about the Sterling buyout? Pop asked Marcus. Julia's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. Yeah, Marcus said, his voice hard. They sent another letter yesterday, offering fair market value for the docks. Fair market value? Pop snorted. They want to tear everything down and build condos. Put us all out of work. They're not getting the Iron Lady, Marcus said firmly. I don't care how much money they throw around. Julia set down her spoon, her appetite gone. What if people want to sell? Both men looked at her. Some might, Pop said slowly. Times are hard. Fish prices are down. Big commercial operations are squeezing out the independents. Sterling Enterprises knows that. They're counting on it. We're not selling, Marcus repeated. This dock, this community, it's been here for 70 years. My grandfather fished these waters. I'm not letting some billionaire in a suit take it away because he wants ocean views for his rich friends. The anger in his voice was real and deep. Julia felt it like a punch to the chest. She was that billionaire. Not a man, but close enough. Her family was the one trying to take his life away. Jules, you okay? Marcus was looking at her with concern. Yeah, She stood abruptly. I should go. It's late. It's still pouring, Marcus said. Wait until... I have a bus to catch. She grabbed the coat. She still wore that stupid coat and headed for the door. Jules! Marcus followed her onto the porch. Rain soaked them both immediately. What happened? Did we say something? No, I need to go. She ran down the steps before he could stop her, her heart pounding with guilt. Behind her, she heard Pop's voice through the open door. "That girl's running from more than bad weather, son?" The next afternoon, Julia sat in her office at Sterling Enterprises, staring at documents she couldn't focus on. Through her window, she could see the whole city spread out below. Somewhere out there was the dock. Marcus. A life she'd fallen into by accident and now couldn't imagine leaving. Her phone buzzed. "Elise, your father wants you in the conference room. Now." Julia closed her eyes, took a breath, and became Julia Sterling again. She fixed her hair, straightened her jacket, and walked down the hall with her chin up. The conference room was full of men in suits. Her father sat at the head of the table, Grant beside him. They were looking at blueprints. "Julia," her father said without warmth, "we're finalizing the harbor redevelopment. I want you to review the contracts." She looked at the blueprints. Where Marcus's dock should be, there were luxury condos, a marina for yachts, a shopping district. Everything that made the place real and alive had been erased and replaced with something cold and profitable. "When does this start?" she asked. "We're pushing hard," Grant said, smiling. "Most of the holdouts are ready to sell. There's one stubborn fisherman giving us trouble, but his loan is coming due. Once the bank seizes his boat, he'll have no choice." Julia's blood went cold. "What?" "Standard business," her father said, waving a hand. "He's overextended. We may have encouraged the bank to call in the debt early. Once he's out, the rest will fall in line." They were talking about Marcus. They were going to take his boat, his life. "That's—" Julia's voice shook. "That's cruel." Her father looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "It's business. Don't be sentimental." She wanted to scream, wanted to tell them exactly what she thought of their business. But if she did, she'd reveal herself, and she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. "I need to review these contracts," she said carefully. "Can I take them to my office?" "Of course." Her father smiled, actually smiled. "I'm glad you're taking an interest." Julia gathered the papers and walked out, her hands shaking. Friday morning, Julia watched from behind a stack of crates as a sleek black car pulled up to Marcus's dock. A man in a suit got out, carrying a briefcase. She should have left, should have let Marcus handle his own business. But her feet wouldn't move. "Mr. Thorne?" The banker's voice carried across the dock. "We need to discuss your loan." Marcus was working on the boat's engine. He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's not due for 2 weeks. The terms have changed. We're calling it in. Full payment by Monday, or we repossess the Iron Lady." "You can't do that." "Read your contract, Mr. Thorne. We can, and we are." The banker handed him papers. "I'm sorry. It's just business." Marcus's face went hard. "Get off my dock." "Mr. Thorne?" "I said get off my dock." The banker left, quickly. Marcus stood there, holding the papers, his shoulders tight with anger and something else. Fear. Julia could see it, even from a distance. He looked at the Iron Lady like someone looking at a dying friend. Julia's decision was instant and absolute. She couldn't write a check. That would reveal who she was. But she had access to cash. Her personal safe at home, the one her father didn't know about. The one her mother had left her with money that was Julia's alone. She pulled out her phone and called Elise. "I need you to do something," Julia said quietly. "And I need you not to ask questions." Monday morning came cold and bright. Julia had barely slept. She'd spent the weekend getting cash, planning, and now she stood in the shadows near the Iron Lady before dawn, watching Marcus's truck pull up. She moved quickly to the boat, found the glove box in the small cabin, and placed an envelope inside. The envelope held enough money to cover Marcus's loan payment and a little extra. A note written in block letters said, "Found this. Pay it forward. A friend." She was back behind the crates before Marcus boarded the boat. Julia held her breath as she watched him move around the deck, preparing for the day. He went into the cabin, came back out, went back in. Then he emerged holding the envelope, confusion written all over his face. "Jules," he called out, looking around. "You here?" She stepped out slowly. "Yeah? Did you see anyone? Someone on the boat?" Julia forced herself to look confused. "When? Just now?" "Yeah, or earlier. A man in a suit, maybe?" Her heart pounded. She was a terrible liar. Always had been. "I saw a car earlier, when I was walking up. Black sedan. A man got out, but he left pretty quick." It wasn't completely a lie. She had seen that car, days ago. Marcus looked at the envelope, then at the dock, then back at the money. "This is enough to pay off the loan. More than enough." "That's good, right?" "It's weird." But he was smiling. Actually smiling. The fear that had been in his eyes was gone. "It's real weird, but yeah, it's good." The banker came at 9 o'clock, clearly expecting to repossess the boat. Marcus handed him cash, counted out carefully. The banker's face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, resignation. "Well," he said finally. "Congratulations, Mr. Thorne. The boat is yours free and clear." When the car drove away, Marcus just stood there, looking at the receipt in his hands. Then he turned and saw Julia. Really saw her. He crossed the dock in quick strides and picked her up, lifting her clean off the ground in a hug that squeezed the air from her lungs. "It's gonna be okay," he said into her hair. "It's all gonna be okay." Julia wrapped her arms around his neck and let herself have this moment. Let herself feel his strength and his joy and pretend, just for a second, that she wasn't living a lie. When he set her down, he was grinning. "I don't know who left that money, but I'm not going to question it. Maybe the universe just decided to cut me a break." "Maybe," Julia whispered. "Come on." He grabbed her hand. "Let's go celebrate. I'm buying you the best fish sandwich on the dock." His hand was warm in hers, calloused and real and right. And Julia let him lead her toward the market, her heart full and breaking at the same time, because she knew this couldn't last. Knew that sooner or later, the truth would come out. But for now, for this morning, she let herself be Jules. Let herself be happy. Let herself fall a little more in love with a man who would hate her if he knew who she really was. The Saturday gala was torture. Julia stood in another ballroom, in another expensive dress, this one midnight blue, and felt like she was play acting. Everyone around her seemed fake now. Their laughs were too loud, their smiles too practiced, their conversations too empty. Grant found her by the champagne table. He slid his arm around her waist possessively, and she had to force herself not to flinch. "You've been distant," he said. His cologne was too strong. "Cold feet?" "Something like that." "Well, warm them up. Your father's been telling everyone the wedding is in 6 weeks. He squeezed her waist. "And I've been very patient with your little mood." Julia pulled away from him. "Don't touch me like that." "Excuse me?" "I said don't touch me." Grant's face hardened. "We're engaged, Julia. People are watching." "Let them watch." She walked away, leaving him standing there. Whispers followed her across the ballroom. She didn't care. She pushed through the crowd and out onto the terrace, gulping cold night air. Her phone was in her hand before she realized what she was doing. She pulled up the weather app, checking conditions at sea. Marcus had mentioned he was going night fishing. Tuna were running, and the money was good. The weather showed clear skies, calm seas. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. She wanted to be out there with him, under those stars, doing real work, instead of standing here in a dress that cost more than his boat payment, pretending to be someone she hated. Julia. Her father's voice cut through her thoughts. What was that scene with Grant? I don't want him touching me. Too bad. You're marrying him in 6 weeks. Julia looked at her father, really looked at him. When had he become this? Or had he always been this way, and she'd just been too young to see it? What if I said no? She asked quietly. Then you'd lose your trust fund, your position in the company, everything. Maybe I don't want those things. Walter Sterling laughed, actually laughed. Don't be ridiculous. You're a Sterling. This is who you are. But he was wrong. She'd spent the last 2 weeks discovering who she really was, and it wasn't this. I need to go, she said. The dinner hasn't even started. I don't care. She walked past him through the ballroom, ignoring the stares and whispers. She handed her valet ticket to the attendant and waited for her rental car, her heart pounding. 20 minutes later, she was driving to the bluffs overlooking the ocean. She parked and got out, walking to the edge where she could see the water stretching black and endless under the stars. Somewhere out there, Marcus was fishing, working, living a real life, and she was here, caught between 2 worlds, belonging to neither. Sunday morning at the fish market changed everything. Julia had never been to anything like it. The noise was incredible. Vendors shouting prices, buyers arguing, the smell of fresh fish sharp in the air. Marcus had called her at dawn, asking if she wanted to help sell the catch. She'd said yes before he finished asking. Now she stood behind his stand, watching him work. He was good with people, friendly but firm, knowing exactly when to haggle and when to hold his price. You gonna help or just watch? He teased. What do I do? Sell fish. He grinned. Use that smart brain of yours. So she did. A woman approached, looking at the tuna steaks. How much? 20 a pound, Julia said, then remembered Marcus's coaching. But it's the freshest you'll find, caught last night. We can do 3 pounds for 50. The woman considered. 45. Julia looked at Marcus, who nodded slightly. Deal. By noon, they'd sold almost everything. Julia's hands smelled like fish. Her hair was a mess, and she'd never felt more accomplished. They ate lunch sitting on the tailgate of Marcus's truck. Greasy fish tacos from a vendor. Cold sodas. The sun warm on their faces. You're a natural, Marcus said, bumping her shoulder with his. Made more in 4 hours than I usually make all day. It's just sales, reading people, finding what they want. Where'd you learn that? Julia froze. Careful. My mom used to take me to farmers' markets. Before she died. It was partially true. Her mother had taken her once or twice, before the cancer, before everything fell apart. Marcus reached over and brushed something from her cheek. A smudge of dirt or fish scale, she wasn't sure. His touch was gentle, and he let his hand linger for just a second. You're different than when you first showed up, Jules, he said quietly. You were all wound up, like you were afraid to breathe. Now you're lighter, like you figured out how to be yourself. Julia's heart hammered. She wanted to kiss him. Wanted it so badly it hurt. But she couldn't. Not while she was lying to him. Not while he didn't know who she really was. Marcus, she started, not knowing how to finish. Yeah? Thank you. For giving me a chance when I had nothing. He smiled, warm and real. You gave yourself the chance, Jules. You showed up. You worked hard. That's all you. They sat there in comfortable silence, eating their tacos, and Julia felt something shift inside her chest. Something big and terrifying and wonderful. She was falling in love with him. Maybe had already fallen. Tuesday evening, the grocery store incident almost destroyed everything. Julia and Marcus were shopping for dinner. He'd insisted on cooking for her, said it was time he returned the favor for all her hard work. The store was small, local, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. They were laughing about something. Marcus had just told a terrible joke about a fish and a piano when Julia saw it. A TV mounted on the wall, playing the local news. Her face filled the screen. Julia Sterling, heiress to the Sterling fortune, has been notably absent from recent public events. Sources close to the family suggest. The photo was from a charity gala last year. Her hair was up, diamonds at her throat, the camera catching her in profile. She looked cold, distant, nothing like the woman in work boots standing in a grocery store. But it was still her. Marcus glanced at the TV and sneered. That's the family trying to buy the wharf. Vultures. Julia turned away quickly, pretending to study a shelf of pasta sauce. Her hands shook so badly she had to grip the shelf to steady them. Jules, you okay? Yeah, She couldn't breathe. The store felt too small, too hot. I need some air. She walked quickly toward the exit. Marcus caught up with her in the parking lot. Hey! He put his hands on her shoulders, concerned. What happened in there? Nothing. I just got dizzy. You feel sick? No, I'm fine. Really. But she wasn't fine. She was shaking, terrified, the weight of the lie crushing her. Marcus studied her face, then pulled her into a hug. She pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the smell of him, salt and cedar and clean sweat. It calmed her, but the guilt only got worse. Come on, he said softly. Let's get you home. But she didn't have a home. Not really. She had a penthouse she avoided and a rental car she slept in sometimes. She had 2 lives and belonged to neither. Can we just drive? She asked. I don't want to go back yet. Sure. They drove along the coast highway, windows down, the ocean spreading dark beside them. Marcus didn't push her to talk. He just drove, one hand on the wheel, his music playing low, old blues that fit the mood. Julia watched the water and wondered how much longer she could keep this up. How many more close calls before everything fell apart? Wednesday afternoon, Pop Thorne called her out. Marcus was working on a net down by the water, so Julia was alone with Pop on his porch. She'd been helping him with his medications, learning his routine. He was sharp despite his age, his eyes missing nothing. I know you're not who you say you are, Pop said suddenly. Julia's blood went cold. What? Oh, don't play dumb. You're too smart for that. He wheeled his chair closer. I don't know your real name, and I don't know exactly what you're running from, but I know you're running. Julia's throat tightened. Please don't tell Marcus. Why? What's so terrible about the truth? It's complicated. Always is. Pop looked out at the water where Marcus worked. My son is a good man, best man I know, but he's been hurt before. Woman named Sheila, few years back. She used him, got close, made him fall for her, then used him to get information for her family's competing business. Broke his heart. Julia felt sick. I'm not. I didn't say you were, Pop interrupted. But I'm telling you so you understand. Marcus doesn't trust easy, and when he does trust, it's complete, total. If you betray that, he looked at her hard. It'll destroy him. I don't want to hurt him. Then tell him the truth. Whatever it is you're hiding, tell him before he finds out some other way. What if he hates me? Then at least he'll hate you honest. Pop's voice was gentle despite the harsh words. Girl, I've been alive 73 years. And I've learned one thing for sure. The truth always comes out. It's better if it comes from you. Julia knew he was right, had known it for days, but knowing something and having the courage to do it were different things. I'll tell him, she promised. Soon. Don't wait too long, Pop warned. Marcus is falling for you. I can see it. Every day you wait makes it harder. That night, Julia cooked dinner in Marcus's kitchen. She'd planned every word, rehearsed her confession 100 times. She'd tell him everything, who she was, why she ran, how she felt about him. She'd lay it all out and pray he understood. The chicken was in the oven. The table was set. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Marcus came through the door smelling like the ocean, grinning when he saw her. Something smells amazing. It's just chicken and rice. Made by you, which makes it amazing. He kissed her forehead, casual, affectionate, easy, and her heart broke a little. Let me clean up. 5 minutes. But before she could respond, his phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. Hold on, he said, answering. Yeah? What? Where? All right, I'm coming. He hung up and looked at her apologetically. Jules, I'm so sorry. Tommy's boat broke down 15 miles out. He's got no engine, no radio, just a cell phone with dying battery. I have to go tow him in. How long will you be? Few hours, probably. He grabbed his jacket. Rain check on dinner? Of course. He paused at the door, looking back at her. His expression was soft, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. You're the best thing in my life, Jules. You know that? The words hit her like a physical blow. Marcus. We'll talk tomorrow, I promise. I've been wanting to. There's things I need to say. He smiled. Important things. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him. Julia stood in the kitchen, the confession still trapped in her throat. She looked at the dinner she'd made, the careful setup, her planned moment of truth. She cleaned up slowly, putting everything away. Then she found a notepad and wrote, I have something to tell you. She left the note on the kitchen table where he'd find it. Tomorrow, she promised herself. Tomorrow she'd tell him everything, no matter what it cost her. But first, she had to get through tonight. She drove back to her rental car and sat in the parking lot, watching the empty ocean, wondering if love was always this terrifying, wondering if the truth would set her free or destroy everything she'd found. Thursday morning, Marcus found her note and smiled. You want to tell me something? He asked when she arrived at the dock. Tell me on the water. I'm heading out for tuna. Big money day. Come with me. Julia's stomach flipped. The ocean, miles from shore. Just the two of them. It was perfect, actually. Private, honest, no distractions. Okay, she said. Yes. Marcus's grin was brilliant. Fair warning, it's a long day. We'll be 20 miles out. I don't care. Good. He helped her onto the Iron Lady, his hand warm and strong in hers. Let's go catch some fish. The boat's engine rumbled to life. They left the harbor behind, the city shrinking on the horizon. The ocean spread endless around them, gray-blue and rolling. Julia stood beside Marcus at the wheel, watching him navigate. He was completely in his element out here, confident, focused, at peace. You ever been this far out? He asked. Never. It's different, right? Out here, all the land problems seem small. It's just you and the water. He glanced at her. And good company. She smiled despite her nerves. Yeah, good company. They reached the fishing grounds by noon. Marcus cut the engine and started preparing the lines. Julia helped where she could, learning the rhythms of the work. Then the weather changed. It happened fast. Too fast. The wind picked up from nowhere, and the sky turned dark. The radio crackled, with a sudden storm warning. "Damn," Marcus muttered, rushing to secure the gear. "This wasn't supposed to hit until tonight." The first big wave rocked the boat hard. Julia grabbed the railing. "We need to head back," Marcus said. "Now." He turned to start the engine, but something went wrong. A grinding sound, then nothing. No. He disappeared into the engine compartment. The waves were getting bigger. The boat rolled and pitched. Julia felt her stomach drop with each swell. Marcus emerged, his face tight. "The winch jammed. When I tried to restart, something in the drive shaft broke. We're dead in the water." "Can you fix it?" "Maybe, but not in this." Another wave hit them. Marcus grabbed the radio. "Mayday, mayday. This is the Iron Lady, 20 miles southwest of Harbor Point. Engine failure in heavy weather. Requesting assistance." Static crackled back, then a voice. "Copy, Iron Lady. Coast Guard is dispatched. ETA 90 minutes. Can you maintain?" "We'll try." Marcus hung up the radio and looked at Julia. "I need to get the sea anchor deployed. It'll keep us pointed into the waves. Stay in the cabin." "What can I do?" "Pray." He went out onto the deck. The wind was howling now, rain starting to pelt down. Julia watched through the cabin window as Marcus fought with the anchor line, trying to get it secured. Then, a rogue wave hit. The boat listed hard to port. Marcus lost his footing, slamming into the gunwale. When he stood up, blood ran down the side of his face from a gash on his head. Julia didn't think. She pushed out of the cabin into the storm. "Get back inside!" Marcus shouted. "You're hurt!" "I'm fine! Jules, please!" Another wave hit. Marcus went down again, this time tangled in the anchor line. Julia grabbed him, helping him up. Blood mixed with rain on his face. "The sea anchor," he gasped. "It has to deploy or we'll turn sideways. If we broach in these waves—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Julia understood. Sideways to these waves, the boat would roll. They could capsize. "Tell me what to do," she said. "You can't—" "Tell me." Marcus looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. Trust. "The winch. You have to release it manually. See that lever?" She saw it. "Got it. When I say go, you pull it hard. The anchor will shoot out, then get back inside." They worked together, Marcus timing the waves, calling out commands. Julia's hands were numb, her clothes soaked, but she followed every instruction exactly. "Now!" Marcus shouted. She pulled the lever with everything she had. The winch released, the anchor deployed, and the boat swung around to face the waves properly. "Inside!" Marcus grabbed her hand and pulled her into the cabin. They collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. The boat was still pitching badly, but it was stable, pointed into the storm. They'd done it. Marcus touched his head wound and winced. "We need to wrap this." Julia found the first aid kit. Her hands shook as she cleaned the cut. It was deep, would probably need stitches, and wrapped it with gauze. "You didn't panic," Marcus said, watching her face. "Most people would have panicked. I don't panic under pressure." The words came out automatically, and Julia realized it was true. All those board meetings, all those high-stakes negotiations, they'd trained her for this. Where'd a homeless woman learn to stay that calm? Julia's hands stilled. This was it. The moment. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." "Yeah, you said." He caught her hand. "But first, I need to say something. I've been trying to figure out how to say it for days." "Marcus." "I love you, Jules." The words hung in the air between them. Simple, honest, true. Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too." He pulled her close and kissed her. It was desperate and real and perfect. She kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, all her love and all her guilt and all her fear. When they broke apart, she opened her mouth to confess everything. But the radio crackled. "Iron Lady, this is Coast Guard Cutter Steadfast. We have you on radar. Towboat en route. Hang tight." The moment was broken. Marcus pulled her against his chest, holding her as the boat pitched and rolled. "We're gonna be okay," he murmured. "We're gonna be fine." Julia closed her eyes and held him tight, knowing that in a few hours, when they reached shore, everything would change. Because she'd seen the black SUV through the cabin window just before the storm hit. Seen it parked at the dock, waiting. Her father had found her, and her time as Jules was over. The Coast Guard tow took 3 hours. 3 hours of Marcus holding her, telling her stories about growing up on these waters, making plans for when they got back to shore. 3 hours of Julia memorizing everything, the sound of his voice, the warmth of his body, the way he absent-mindedly played with her fingers while he talked. 3 hours before her world ended. The dock came into view as the sun started to set. Even from a distance, Julia could see the black SUV. Her stomach twisted into knots. "Big crowd waiting," Marcus said, squinting at the shore. "Word must have gotten out about the rescue." But Julia knew better. She could see the figures standing apart from the curious onlookers. Security guards in dark suits. And in the center, arms crossed, her father. The towboat maneuvered the Iron Lady into position. Dock hands caught the lines. Marcus helped Julia step off first, his hand steady on her back. That's when the SUV doors opened. Walter Sterling strode forward, flanked by 2 security guards and Grant. His face was thunderous. Behind him, Julia could see Pop Thorne in his wheelchair, his expression sad and knowing. "Julia!" Her father's voice cut across the dock like a whip. "Get in the car. The board is convening." The world seemed to slow down. Julia felt Marcus's hand fall away from her back, felt the air change between them. "Julia?" Marcus's voice was quiet, confused. She couldn't bear to look at him. "That's right," Walter said, striding closer. "Julia Sterling, my daughter, the heiress whose family owns half this city." He looked at Marcus with contempt. "Did you really think you could keep her? She's been slumming, Fisherman. That's all this was." "No," Julia whispered, finally turning to Marcus. "That's not—" But the look on his face stopped her cold. Betrayal. Pure and absolute. "Julia Sterling," he said slowly, like testing the words, like they tasted wrong. His eyes moved from her face to her father, then to Grant in his expensive suit. "You're them. You're the ones killing this dock." "Marcus, please." "You lied to me." His voice was flat, dead, worse than anger. "About everything. Your name, who you are, what you want." "I wanted to tell you." "When?" The word came out harsh. "Before or after your family destroys everyone here? Before or after you got what you wanted from me? I never wanted to hurt you. But you did." He looked at her like she was a stranger, like the last 2 weeks had never happened. "Did you laugh about it? The poor fisherman who fell for the rich girl playing dress-up?" "It wasn't like that." But he was already backing away. The crowd had gathered. Other fishermen, dock workers, people Marcus had known his whole life. They were all staring at Julia like she was poison. "Marcus, son," Pop called out. "Let her explain." "There's nothing to explain," Marcus said. His eyes were bright with unshed tears, which somehow made it worse. "She's exactly who her father says she is, and I'm exactly what they think I am, a fool." Walter grabbed Julia's arm. "Enough of this circus, in the car, now." Julia tried to pull away. "Wait, Marcus, please!" But security guards were already moving her toward the SUV. She struggled, calling his name, but they were too strong. The last thing she saw before the door closed was Marcus walking away, not looking back, his shoulders rigid with pain. Then they were driving, and her father was yelling, and Grant was smirking, and Julia felt something inside her shatter completely. They locked her in the penthouse. Not literally. There were no chains, no bars. But Walter took her keys, her phone, her credit cards. He posted security at the elevator and the stairs. She was a prisoner in her own home. "You embarrassed this family," he said coldly that first night. "Running off, playing poor, sleeping with that man." "Don't you dare," Julia said, her voice shaking. "Don't talk about him." "I'll talk about whatever I want. You're my daughter, my property, according to the trust fund your mother left. And you will do what I say." "Mom wouldn't have wanted this." "Your mother is dead. I'm the one who built this empire, and you're going to help me keep it." He turned to Grant. "Move up the wedding. The 2 weeks. I want this locked down before she does something else stupid." Grant smiled. "My pleasure." They left her alone in her room. Julia stared out the window at the city lights, at the distant darkness where the ocean waited, and felt completely hollow. Elise snuck in later that night. She'd climbed the fire escape, risked her job, maybe her safety, to reach Julia. "Oh, honey," Elise whispered, pulling Julia into a hug. "I saw it on the news. I'm so sorry." Julia couldn't cry. The tears were trapped somewhere too deep. "Is he okay? Marcus?" Elise's face said everything. "He called me. Just once. Told me to tell you." She paused. "He burned the coat, Julia. The one you were wearing when you met him. He said to tell you that part of his life is over." That's when the tears finally came. Julia sobbed into Elise's shoulder, great wrenching cries that shook her whole body. Because burning the coat meant burning her. Burning Jules. Burning everything they'd been together. "What do I do?" Julia gasped. "How do I fix this?" "I don't know if you can," Elise said honestly. "But I know you can't fix it from here, locked in this tower like some princess in a story." "He'll never forgive me." "Maybe not, but you'll never forgive yourself if you don't try." Saturday at the docks, Marcus was drowning. Not in water, in anger, in hurt, in the looks people gave him, half pity, half amusement. The rich girl's plaything, that's what they saw now. He threw himself into work with brutal intensity, repaired nets until his hands bled, cleaned the boat until every surface gleamed. Anything to stop thinking about her face, her laugh, the way she'd felt in his arms during the storm, all of it a lie. "Marcus," Pop said from the dock. "Son, you need to talk about this." "Nothing to talk about." "That's bull, and you know it." Marcus threw down his rag. "What do you want me to say, Pop? That I fell for a woman who doesn't exist? That I'm an idiot who believed her when she said she was just Jules? That I told her I loved her while she was probably laughing inside?" "You think she was laughing in that storm? When she was helping you, risking her life?" "I don't know what she was doing. I don't know anything about her. That's the point." Pop was quiet for a long moment. "Your mama, God rest her, she used to say people show you who they are in crisis. Not in their words, but in their actions." "Yeah? And what did Julia, whatever her name is, what did her actions show me?" "That she worked hard. That she stayed calm under pressure. That she loved you enough to risk everything out there." Pop wheeled closer. "That she looked at you like you hung the moon." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Doesn't matter. It was all built on a lie." "Was it? Or was the lie what she called herself? Because the woman I saw helping you, laughing with you, fitting in here, that woman was real. You don't know that. Neither do you, but you're too scared to find out. The words hit hard. Marcus looked at his father. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. You're scared that if you let her explain, you might understand, might forgive her, might have to risk your heart again. Pop's voice was gentle. And after Sheila, I get it. But son, this isn't the same. Sheila used me for business information. Julia. Marcus stopped. Her whole family is trying to destroy our dock. How is that different? Did she help them? Did she give them information? Or did she spend every free moment here, working beside us? Marcus didn't answer. Because Pop was right. Julia hadn't helped her family. If anything, she'd seemed upset when they'd talked about the Sterling buyout. She'd left abruptly that night at dinner. And then, somehow, mysteriously, money had appeared to save his boat. Oh no, Marcus whispered. What? The money, in the boat, the anonymous payment. He looked at Pop. That was her, wasn't it? Pop's expression confirmed it. Marcus sat down hard on a crate. She saved my boat, used her own money, and He'd accused her of using him, of laughing at him. He'd walked away without letting her explain. What do I do? He asked. What your heart tells you. But Marcus's heart was a mess of hurt and love and confusion. Before he could figure it out, Big Mike came running down the dock. Marcus, turn on the news, right now! 1 week later, Julia stood at her bedroom window. Today was supposed to be her wedding dress fitting. Instead, she was reading contracts. Elise had smuggled them in. All the documents related to the dock buyout. Julia had spent 7 straight days going through every page, every clause, every legal detail. And she'd found it. A loophole, a clause in her mother's trust that her father either didn't know about or had forgotten. If Julia took full control of her trust, and she could, because she was over 25, she had the power to override certain business decisions, including the dock development. But taking control meant breaking free completely, meant giving up any chance of reconciliation with her father, meant burning every bridge to the life she'd known. Julia looked at her reflection in the window. She barely recognized herself anymore. The woman in designer clothes felt like a costume. The real her was the one in work boots, smelling like fish, laughing on Marcus's boat. Even if Marcus never spoke to her again, she had to do this. Had to save the dock. Had to prove that Jules was real, that everything she'd felt was real. She picked up her phone and called Elise. Set up a press conference, tomorrow, the Grand Hotel. Tell them Julia Sterling has an announcement about her engagement. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The ballroom was packed. Every news outlet in the city had sent cameras. Julia stood backstage in a navy suit, powerful but not flashy, and watched her father and Grant at the podium smiling for the cameras. They thought they'd won, thought they'd broken her. They were wrong. The teleprompter was loaded with words about love and commitment and merging families. Walter kept glancing backstage, making sure Julia was ready to play her part. She stepped out to thunderous applause. Flashbulbs exploded. She walked to the podium, her head high. Her father whispered as she passed, "Make this good." "Oh, I will." Julia reached the microphone. The room fell silent. She looked at the teleprompter, then deliberately looked away from it. "Thank you for coming," she said clearly. "I know you're expecting a wedding announcement, but that's not why I'm here." Grant's smile faltered. Walter's face went hard. 2 weeks ago, I ran away from my engagement party. I was tired of being treated like a business asset instead of a person. I was tired of lies and manipulations, and people making decisions about my life without my consent. She paused. So I left, and in leaving, I found, in something real. The cameras clicked frantically. I met a man who didn't know my name or my bank account. A man who offered me work when I needed it, who treated me with respect I'd never earned in a boardroom. A man who showed me what it meant to build something with your own hands, to be part of a community, to live honestly. Walter stood up. Julia, that's enough. No, Dad, it's not nearly enough. She looked at him directly. You tried to buy out the waterfront docks. You called in loans early to force honest people to sell. You manipulated and schemed. And you tried to make me part of it. The room erupted in whispers. Cameras swiveled to Walter. But here's what you didn't know, Julia continued. Mom's trust has a clause. If I take full control, which I'm doing today, I have the authority to override certain corporate decisions. And my first act is canceling the dock redevelopment project. Completely. You can't do that, Walter shouted. Actually, I can. I had lawyers check. 3 different firms. She looked at the cameras. Those docks will stay exactly as they are. That community will remain intact. And anyone who was forced to sell will have first option to buy back their property at the original price. Grant grabbed her arm. You're making a huge mistake. Julia pulled free and spoke into the microphone. I'm also breaking my engagement to Grant Whitmore. This was never a marriage. It was a business transaction. And I'm done being merchandise. She stepped back from the podium. Pandemonium erupted, reporters shouting questions, Walter and Grant yelling, cameras flashing everywhere. Julia walked off the stage. She didn't run this time. She marched, head high, while her father screamed her name. Outside, Elise waited with a car. Not the SUV, a regular sedan. You did it, Elise breathed. You really did it. I did. Julia felt light, like a weight she'd carried her whole life had finally lifted. Now drive me to the docks. Are you sure? Marcus might not. I know, but I have to try. The docks were quiet when Julia arrived. Early evening, most boats already in for the day. She'd changed in the car. Jeans, work boots, a simple shirt. No designer labels, no pretense, just her. She walked down the pier slowly, her heart hammering. The Iron Lady sat at its usual mooring, but Marcus wasn't on it. He's at the processing plant. Big Mike's voice made her jump. The old fisherman stood nearby, arms crossed. Been working himself half to death all week. I need to talk to him. Not sure he wants to talk to you. I know, but I have to try. Big Mike studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded toward the plant. Bay 3. He's gutting fish. Julia walked to the processing plant. It was cold inside, the smell of fish overwhelming. She found Bay 3 and stopped in the doorway. Marcus stood at a long table, his hands moving with practiced efficiency, cleaning fish. He looked tired, worn down. Her heart broke seeing him like this. She stepped inside. He didn't look up. We're closed for walk-ins. Marcus? His hands stilled. Slowly, he turned around. When he saw her, every emotion crossed his face at once. Anger, hurt, hope, fear. What are you doing here? His voice was flat. I came to tell you the truth. All of it. Little late for that. I know I should have told you from the beginning. But Marcus, I was scared. She stepped closer. I've been Julia Sterling my whole life. The heiress, the chess piece. The thing people wanted for money or power or connections. Nobody ever just wanted me. So you lied. Yes, I lied about my name, about where I came from. But everything else. Her voice broke. Everything I felt, everything I did, every moment with you, that was real. I wasn't pretending to be Jules. I was finally being myself. Marcus set down his knife. You saved my boat. The anonymous money? That was you? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have known who I was, and I wasn't ready to lose you yet. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I know that's selfish. I know I should have told you. But I fell in love with you, and I was terrified you'd hate me if you knew the truth. I did hate you, he said quietly, for about 5 minutes after you drove away. Then I missed you. Even while I was angry, I missed you. I'm so sorry. For lying, for hurting you, for being a coward. She wiped her eyes. But I'm here now, and I'm not running anymore. What does that mean? I broke my engagement. I cut ties with my father. I canceled the doc buyout. She pulled papers from her bag. These are legal documents. The docs are protected. Your community is safe. And She took a shaky breath. I'm here, asking for a job. Any job. I don't care what it is. Marcus stared at her. A job. I want to earn my place here, not buy it, not use my name or money. I want to work, like everyone else. I want to prove that Jules wasn't a lie. She was real. She is real. Jules. He said her name like he was testing it, seeing if it still fit. The woman who couldn't sand wood to save her life but kept trying anyway. Yes. The woman who sold more fish in 4 hours than I usually sell all day. Yes. The woman who kept her head during a storm and probably saved both our lives. Julia nodded, not trusting her voice. Marcus stepped around the table. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell the fish and salt on him, could see the exhaustion in his eyes. I love you, he said. I tried not to. Spent a week trying to stop. But I can't. Even knowing you lied, even knowing who you are. I love you. I love you too. So much. But Jules, he caught himself. Julia, if we do this, it has to be honest. No more secrets, no more lies. I need to know I can trust you. You can, I swear. I'll tell you everything, answer any question. I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust, if that's what it takes. He looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled. You're a terrible liar, you know that? She laughed through her tears. The worst. But you're a hell of a first mate. Then he kissed her. It was soft and careful and full of promises. Julia wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, tasting salt and hope and new beginnings. When they broke apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. So, you want a job? Yes. Can you gut fish? I can learn. It's minimum wage, long hours, smells terrible. I don't care. You're really going to give up penthouses and galas for this? Julia looked around the cold, smelly processing plant. Looked at Marcus with fish scales on his shirt and hope in his eyes. Looked at her future, uncertain, scary, real. I already did, she said. I gave it up the night I met you. I just needed time to figure that out. 6 months later, the morning sun turned the water gold. Julia stood on the deck of the Iron Lady, which Marcus had jokingly renamed the Iron Jules, though he said he'd change it back if she asked, and managed the radio traffic. She worked logistics for the local fishing co-op now, helped all the boats get fair prices, coordinated deliveries, negotiated with buyers. She was good at it. Really good. Turns out the skills she'd learned in boardrooms translated perfectly to helping people who actually needed it. Marcus was at the wheel, navigating them back to dock after a morning run. They worked in perfect sync now, reading each other without words. Her phone rang. Walter, again. She let it go to voicemail. Again. He'd called every week since the press conference, alternating between threats and attempts at reconciliation. She never answered. Some bridges needed to stay burned. Your dad? Marcus asked, not looking away from the water. Yeah. You okay? I am. And she meant it. She had no relationship with her father, had lost her trust fund, lived in a tiny apartment above the fish market. But she had Marcus, had Pop, who treated her like family, had a community that had slowly, grudgingly accepted her after watching her work gutting fish for 2 months straight. She had a life that was hers, built with her own hands, honest and real. They docked the boat. Marcus hopped out first, then helped her down. His hands were rough and familiar, and she never wanted to let go. They walked up the pier together, arguing playfully about dinner. I'm cooking, Julia said. You burned the pasta last time. That was once? 3 times, actually. Well, you're not cooking. You made fish every night this week. Because I'm a fisherman. That's what we do. They were still bickering when they reached Marcus's house. Pop was on the porch, grinning at them. You two fight like an old married couple, he called out. Marcus and Julia looked at each other. He raised an eyebrow, a question in his eyes. Maybe we should make it official, he said, so quietly only she could hear. What do you think, Jules? Julia's heart swelled so big she thought it might burst. I think that's the best idea you've ever had. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple silver band with a tiny diamond. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. Perfect. I've been carrying this for a month, Marcus admitted, waiting for the right moment. This is perfect. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit like it was made for her. Pop wheeled down the ramp, wiping his eyes. About damn time. They stood there on the dock, Marcus and Julia, Pop watching with pride, while the sun climbed higher and boats moved in and out of the harbor. This place that had been threatened was now protected. This community that could have been destroyed was thriving. And Julia Sterling, who'd spent 29 years being someone she hated, had finally become the person she was meant to be. Not an heiress, not a chess piece, not a name on a trust fund. Just Jules, a woman who gutted fish and loved a fisherman and built a life with her own 2 hands. Just Jules, finally, honestly, completely free. The wedding was small, dockside at sunset, surrounded by fishing boats and the people who worked them. No designer dress. Julia wore a simple white sundress. No orchestra. Someone played guitar, and everyone sang off-key. No champagne tower. Just cold beer and Marcus's terrible fish jokes. It was perfect. When they kissed as husband and wife, the whole dock erupted in cheers. Julia laughed against Marcus's lips, tasting salt air and joy and the promise of every tomorrow. Later, as the party wound down and the stars came out, they stood together at the end of the pier. The city lights glittered in the distance, beautiful but meaningless. The real beauty was here, in the dark water and the sound of laughter and the warmth of Marcus's hand in hers. No regrets? He asked softly. Julia thought about the penthouse she'd left, the money she'd given up, the father who'd disowned her, the life that had looked perfect from the outside, but felt like dying on the inside. Then she looked at Marcus, at their friends dancing on the dock, at the life they'd built together, small and real and theirs. Not a single one, she said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being, because love, real, honest, earned love, was worth more than all the penthouses in the world. Marcus pulled her close, and they danced under the stars, while the ocean whispered its approval and the future stretched out before them like an open sea. Full of possibility, full of hope, full of love. Finally home. The end.